Adaptogens are not a new topic here. Yet, because the impression that I have is that many women in our community have heard the term, but they would have a hard time defining the term for a friend, actually explaining what is an adaptogen. So, in fact, you'll hear me ask that straight off. And that was for you. So if you're new to adaptogens, you'll be in good company. If you've been using them for years, right along with me, I think it was about 2014 when I first introduced Maca to our audience. But there's so much more here. Then let's dig in to this topic. So we're not just talking adaptogens, but we're expanding to the herbs and the mushrooms that also fall under this umbrella. We're going to open that door. And I've got the perfect resource if you're looking for more after this episode. My favorite spot in this interview is the way that Danielle, my guest, explained adaptogens and their contribution to energy levels. So we get to that about 3/4 of the way through. And I promise that it's all good before and after that too. I'm Deborah Atkinson. You're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top struggles and concerns, but most of all, hope to inspire you about the possibilities as we age. We, you and I, are collectively raising the glass ceiling about what women can expect. So, we don't have the role model in front of us. We are it, and we're paving the way for those who come behind us, your daughters, your daughter-in-laws, your nieces, and all of those younger colleagues that you mentor. So, what I hope to do is to share with you valuable tools about how to move, what to eat, and how to change your mindset so that you can enjoy the energy and vitality that you want, need, and deserve in this second and better half. And my guest today is a returning guest, and that is always good because it's like a second date, right? First time it's blind, but now I've got her back because, well, number one, she is releasing a book, and I think you might want to get your hands on it, but I asked her to divulge some of the contents for us. Danielle Ryan Broida is a pivotal voice in the functional food and wellness space. As a registered herbologist of the American Herbalists Guild, that's AHG to you and I, certified holistic nutritionist, instructor of mycology, and head of education at Four Sigmatic. She is teaching the world about the importance of life on super herbs and mushrooms for vitality, longevity, and better performance from brain to body. I think she's our girl. She is the author of a new book, Healing Adaptogens, coming out September 27th. That's this year, friends. So stay tuned as we answer the questions. I think you may be interested in going a little bit deeper. And the way I think of it, these kind of books are always just great resources to pass on to those younger women that I was talking about earlier. So pick one up for yourself if you decide to do so, and then pick up a copy. These are the great kind of gifts that you want hanging around for people who care about health and who isn't caring about health today. Let's dive in. Danielle, welcome back.
Thanks, Deborah. It's an honor to be back with you.
It is. It's a good thing we let everybody else in because we were in the green room talking about Boulder and memories of El Dorado Canyon. Any of my listeners who've come to a retreat, the ones held in Boulder, know it's one of my favorite hiking venues. So, but we have more to talk about. So you were here, and everybody knows, I've got favorite drinks that go in mugs, and Four Sigmatic is one of those. And you were here to talk about that. Tell us a little bit more about the what and the why of mushrooms and adaptogens. So I really want to unpack that first of all. And let's start with the real ABCs. What is an adaptogen for somebody who's, I've heard this and I nod, but I couldn't tell you what it was. What is that?
Yeah, great question. Perfect place to start. They really are exploding in popularity right now, and we can talk about why that is and the relevancy of why we need these herbs and mushrooms. So, first hint here for what we're currently experiencing, and especially for longevity and a lot of the things that we'll dive into, and I know you get really into in this show. But the first way to think about adaptogens is a group of super plants and functional mushrooms that help your body adapt to stressors. And there's really three criteria that qualify a plant or a mushroom as an adaptogen. So think of it, it's like an umbrella categorization of about 30 species. We'll dive into a few of them today. And each one of them has to be non-toxic, which is really important. It means that there isn't a dose where your body then gets pushed over an edge, where there's a overdose or a toxic effect on tissue state or on symptoms that you feel. So they're more like foods in this way. So they're safe to take every day. The tradition of many of them is used as a tonic, which means something we take every single day to support general well-being rather than to target a specific symptom. So they're all non-toxic. They're all non-specific, which is really interesting as well. This means that rather than being directly stimulating or directly sedating or targeting just the brain or the respiratory system or hormonal system, they actually are tonifying to multiple systems of the body at the same time. And when we look at each of them, that really is due to how nutrient dense each of them are. And so they have an astonishing amount of vitamins, minerals, different phytochemicals. And because of that, they're nourishing to all these systems at the same time. So rather than having a specific effect, they have this non-specific, more generalized action in the body. And the third, so they're non-toxic, they're non-specific. The third criteria is that they're normalizing. And this is really, really cool. Think about it as a way to create balance and homeostasis in the system. And how this works is adaptogens often express a gas or brake action in the body. So they have compounds that can either stimulate or downregulate, right? The go or the stop. And depending on where your body is when you take that ingredient, you might either feel a little more energized or maybe a little more relaxed. So it's really bringing you into this unique state of balance that's tailored to your needs, right? Adapting to your needs. So I know it's a lot. That's probably why we can't repeat, a 30-second blurb on them.
No, I
But there's
love that. I love how simply you've laid it out. I want to ask a question though.
Please.
Devil's advocate kind of question. So we are on the same side, by the way, audience. It's not my job to make her squirm, but I want to ask this as an observer of society. So you might say that a lot of us in this society that we're in, at least until now, maybe this has changed because of the last few years in the pandemic, but I mean, we tend to be, based on our medical model, a wait till I'm in pain or wait till I'm sick or gain the weight to do the things that would have prevented it in the first place. So when you say something like non-specific, talk to me about the popularity of adaptogens. I mean, are they growing? Is it growing now, or has it been slow to take off? What is that like?
Great question, and you're absolutely right. When we'll link this, but I just finished writing a book on adaptogens, and it was so challenging putting together the format of the book because the way that we in the West approach all sorts of medicine, whether it's a pharmaceutical or an herb or a food, something that we're using to nourish and heal us, we often think about it in terms of what am I lacking or what's my pain point and how can
Yes.
I choose something for that ill, right? The pill for an ill mentality. And
Yeah.
adaptogens cannot be put into that box. And so I really was playing with this and I had to dance around to say, okay, how can I meet people where they're at and offer really practical benefits of these adaptogens without boxing them and putting them into a hole where then it really isn't integrous to what they're truly doing in the body. So that dance is alive and well. I'm glad you bring it up. And there is a way to talk about them for their kind of short-term gains, as well as what they're doing to support the body long-term. But in terms of your question of the relevancy, the popularity, we're starting to see them pop up in skincare. Dove Body Care just launched a line of adaptogens. We're seeing them,
Really?
and it's crazy. Yeah. And like gas stations, you're seeing like ashwagandha gummies and in big box stores. And so there's a lot of riffraff out there. And yet the interest is growing, and people are saying, okay, there's something about this word. They're stress supportive. I'm really stressed. The kind of the solutions, or I don't know, they're more like band-aids that we've been turning towards to support our health. I think a lot of people are saying, wait, this isn't actually giving me the results I wanted or was looking for, was hoping for. And I'm still stressed, or I'm still not sleeping, or maybe I don't have headaches anymore, but now that symptom has digressed and now I feel more gut and digestive issues. And this is because the way that we typically treat ourselves isn't getting to the root, right? To that underlying non-specific nourishing all of the systems of the body and replenishing our organs with the nutrients they need. But we are seeing this shift, this like waking up of, hey, there's got to be something else out there. And what does that look like? And we see that in so many places. The rise in breath work and yoga and meditation, even beyond our little Boulder, Colorado circle. We're seeing like Four Sigmatic. I get to talk to people all over the country and all over the world who are like, wow, this is crossing my path. And I don't think that's by accident. Um, the way that these ingredients work in our body is so accurate to what we need right now as a species. So, we're more stressed than ever before. I think it's like the most unified collective experience we can all relate to, no matter who we are, where we are on the planet. We're like, stress is high, and that's both internal and external. And a lot of it's unavoidable and not going away, right? Some of it we can avoid stress on our body by limiting exposure to stressful news, or, meditating every day. But a lot of the stressors are um, microplastics and toxins in our food and our water and our air, and there's all these things around us that we really can't avoid. So the body's taking on a lot of stress. We also are in a state where the food that we use to nourish ourselves, right? So we need nutrients to deal with all this stress. For example, when we're really stressed, the body uses more vitamin C, right? So then if we're really stressed, we have a depletion of vitamin C. We might be more prone to, or more vulnerable to, an illness. Then we might get sick, and it's this cascade. And so these nutrients that we typically use to refill us are actually not as nutrient dense as they once were. Right? The 43 most common fruits and vegetables have declined drastically in their nutrient density. So now we have compounding stress. We have less tools to deal with it. And we're reaching for quick fixes because we still have all these demands, right? To whether it's kids or grandkids or work, or just self-care, training for marathons like you do. I mean, there's all these things we want to do. And so we're like, okay, what's going to get me through the day? And what I see so often is reaching towards these coping mechanisms that are encouraging this cycle, right? They're keeping us in this cycle instead of getting us outside of it. And adaptogens are so powerful at breaking the downward cycle that many of us are in. And we can talk about kind of what that looks like day in the life, and replenishing us so quickly. And I don't mean like one use, but within a few weeks, which is actually pretty rare within the world of herbal medicine. Often you have to be like, okay, take this for a few months and maybe we'll notice something. Adaptogens are really the hard hitters of the world of herbal medicine. So if we're going to start believing in something and really noticing something, it's a powerful place to start, because it really only takes a couple weeks to say, wow, okay, something's shifting in me for the better.
Very cool. I'm going to go way back to the beginning of this just moment. And I want to say, so yes, we're seeing adaptogens like they've reached every little crevice. Just to listeners, so I have to ask this question, which may be the obvious bit. So you see you're stopping in Quick Trip, no offense, Quick Trip, but gummy adaptogens sitting there with ashwagandha. Do we want to say that those are maybe not like a good grade? Is there a good grade of ashwagandha and maca that we need to kind of qualify where we get it from?
Big time. This is
Okay.
very, very important. And yeah, I just can't harp enough on this conversation and this subject, because so many times people will take an ashwagandha gummy or a ready to drink sparkling beverage that says, oh, it has 2 milligrams of X, Y, or Z adaptogen in it. And they say, yeah, I tried that thing and it didn't work. And I say,
Yeah.
well, was it the right form? Was it the right dose? Was it extracted properly? Where did it come from? Right? Was it coming from the right country? What was the quality? Was it third party tested? Was it organic? All of these are so critical to ensuring that we reap the benefits from them. And so we do have to be really careful of the hype marketing of someone just slapping on the word maca or ashwagandha or turmeric on a package to get more units moving off the shelf. And, I want us to spend our money wisely. We all want that in this time. And so there's lots of ways that we can be mindful about the adaptogens we're choosing to make sure that our bodies can actually use the benefits that we're reaching for them in the first place.
Love that. And I'm glad, although listeners, that is not meant to be condescending in any means, but I do think that, as things crop up, I remember years ago, and maybe 5, when I first got my hands and started drinking matcha, right? Green powdered tea.
Mm-hmm.
There were not very many choices on the shelf. It was easy. And then uh fast forward to today, there's half a dozen at every grocery stores, even the teeny tiny hole in the wall ones, because everybody knows we're buying it. And so there's all different kinds of price points, and we know quality on those types of things is not equal. So just to listeners, it's buyer beware. So be wise in where you're investing, and that they have people coming on to explain to you and educate you about, how to make good choices. This is important. But
Yes.
to all of my listeners now, so probably the one most familiar and common to my listeners is maca. We talk about that a lot. Let's just dive into why are adaptogens particularly relevant to women in this midlife huddle, or, the second half of their life?
So many reasons. Let's break it apart, and we can talk about maca a little. There's a few that are particularly relevant here, where their history of use and why they've been revered. Truly, these species have been revered in so many cultures that they've been used in across the world. And when I was writing this book, I'm like, people are going to get mad at me because every one I'm saying this is the most special in this region and this is the most special. But truly, they are so nutrient dense, and the way that affects our organs, our tissue states, and then our overall vitality is really, it's like anti-aging on a molecular level. And there's so many ways that this happens. Cacao is a really fun example. The 3 oldest women that are ever said to live, a French woman and a Mexican woman and a Italian woman, they were all over 100 years old. One of them was cycling up until after 90. Another smoked cigarettes her whole life. They have all these different stories, but the one commonality was that they had cacao every day, right? The bean that chocolate comes from. And the constituents, cacao actually is the most nutrient dense food. So even of all these adaptogens, it has the most identified phytoconstituent, so the most unique plant compounds of all the other plants and mushrooms out there. And when we think about that, I almost think of our body being like showered in a bath of nutrients. And when we look at aging on a cellular level, it's really apoptosis, it's cell death. And why is that happening? Well, stress, exposure to free radicals, so many reasons that we could pick apart. It really a lack of nutrients and not having enough supply of the right nutrients to replicate DNA strands, for example, which we can talk about with an amazing adaptogenic herb, astragalus. But really, so much of what they're doing is replenishing our system on this cellular level to allow us to have vital tissues, vital organs. And of course, the outward experience of that is more energy, greater libido. They have a really unique focus on hormonal health. And so, yeah, whether I'm like, it's so vast, whether we look at heart health or our libido or performance, the adaptogens have a role and a relevancy to supporting the vitality of each system, really from the root, from the molecule level of our body.
Wow. Okay. So talk to me about a little bit more about the riffraff, and how, well, the junk, right? The great marketing without the backup, that's really not going to help and potentially will set you back. How does a woman avoid that? I mean, let's talk just about regulations for this. I mean, using the word adaptogen. I mean, does that require anything at all? Is it regulated?
Nope.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely.
So adaptogen itself is, yeah, it's a label that we use, as herbalists to say, okay, this is all similarities of this group of plants and mushrooms. But from a regulatory perspective, yeah, there's no, that hasn't caught up yet. So, and there's no standardization of an effective dose. So there's a lot of confusion, especially as the world of cannabis really took hold, and we're seeing these small milligrams, like, this has 5 milligrams in it. And then people often conflate that knowledge to a different herb, like Maca, for example, and say, oh, maybe, if this has 5 milligrams in it, that could be effective, when more commonly, a dose is up to 100 times that potent. So we have to be aware of dosing, how much is in it to experience the benefit. Another key thing to look for is the part of the plant or mushroom that's being used and being sold. This might sound a little weird, but for example, ashwagandha, we use the root. Maybe that's a little more common. Or turmeric, right? Turmeric's an adaptogen. We use the root. But there's many adaptogens like Tulsi or Gotu Kola. We use the leaf. And so a lot of times you'll see especially cheaper brands or Amazon brands using the wrong part of the species. And that part doesn't even contain the medicinal compounds that you're wanting to use it for. So really,
Nice. So they're being
right?
totally honest and transparent, but they know that they're talking to an audience that is just like in kindergarten yet about
Mm,
learning, and it's enough information to be believable. But
yep.
yeah, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There's more. I'm like, what I wrote out in the book, I actually made a top 10 commandments of adaptogens. And it's kind of like a cheat sheet shopping guide. So you can go through and say, okay, what do I need to be aware of? Okay, the dose, right? Super important. What's next to the dose? Oh, the part of the species. Okay, let's make sure I'm actually getting what I'm intending to get. What about the native country, right? This is really important because often adaptogens are found in really extreme climates out in the wilds. This is one of their interesting characteristics. We can think of the doctrine of signatures. Have you spoken about this on the show?
No.
It's a really cool concept. Once you hear it, you're like, oh, yeah, I know that. Just It's basically what something looks like in nature gives us information as to what it will do for our bodies. So a walnut being good for the brain, right?
Hmm.
That example, like,
Wow.
okay, you've heard that, right?
Let's play this game some more. I like it.
So with so many of our adaptogens, they grow in really, really harsh, extreme environments. I'm thinking of rhodiola, for example. I was in Iceland this past summer and went to wild harvest rhodiola. And I'm told, okay, it grows in Iceland. There's glacier ice caps. We have black sand beaches. There's volcanoes, huge temperature fluctuations. Like, talk about environmental stressors. And yet there's this it's a succulent like plant, has this rose like leaf structure to it and a bright yellow flower. And we use the root. And even in the highest hikes and like, where is this rhodiola? I literally, the first time I found it, it was like thousand, um, several thousand feet from where I had parked, and was hours and hours into this hiking trail. And there was a big cliff and a huge rock coming out, jutting out of that cliff. And underneath it, just barely on the side, did I see that rhodiola. And it was this example of the doctrine of signatures where, okay, that is able to be so resilient despite whatever's going around it. It survives and it thrives, and it has for thousands of years. And each one of these adaptogens has a similar story where they are so tolerant of stressors. And we can really take that and apply it to our own bodies. And what, if we were to put them in a nutshell for benefits, it'd be stress support. And that's such a real example out in the world how they do that, and then bringing them into our bodies, they have this similar action, this similar energy.
That is very cool. That is
Right?
very, very, yes. Yeah. The wisdom of nature. That is awesome. Okay. What are the common misconceptions about adaptogens? Like, I can guess one. Am I going to get high?
Yeah,
Am
I
I going
hear
to
this
get pulled over?
totally. I hear this a lot, especially with the mushrooms that are adaptogens. So
Mm-hmm.
there are about 5 functional mushrooms, and I hear that all the time. Are these safe? Are these legal? And first and foremost, these are all legal everywhere around the world. Some of them are even listed as part of the pharmacopoeias of governments, like the Russian pharmacopoeia recognizes certain adaptogens as a recognized medicine. So they're legal, they're safe, right? They have this non-toxic effect, and yeah, there's nothing to be scared of. It's really, really actually a lower threshold of entry than almost all of our other herbal medicines, right? There's thousands of plants and hundreds of mushrooms that we use for their healing benefits. And this really small group, no matter where you are at on your healing journey, there's likely an adaptogen to support you where you don't have to worry about negative side effects, right? They really are more like foods in this way of nourishing the body.
Love it. Okay. So where do we find them, buy them? Obviously, the high quality kind.
Yeah, there's a huge range. You can actually find them if you know what you're looking for, which I think this 10 commandments will be really helpful. And I put out lots of education around how to make sure you're getting the right thing. But once you have that, there's actually small business options as well as bigger business options that you can get the right thing. So sifting through the riffraff, some of my favorite mushroom, if you're looking for the functional mushroom companies, of course, Four Sigmatic. We have Real Mushrooms and Mushroom Revival. A lot of the herbal companies, you can either get the bulk herbs themselves if you're someone that's really keen on the DIY space and you want to make your own herbal teas and decoctions in your kitchen. You can order from places like Mountain Rose Herbs and Frontier Co-op and Star West Botanicals. But once you take this list out with you, it could be a fun experiment to say, okay, I'm going to find the right adaptogen supplement for me, and look at places like Target as well as places like Whole Foods, right? That kind of both the natural and the conventional stores, and know that we are entering in a space where there can be a viable adaptogen supplement in both places if you know what you're looking for. And it's really empowering too, to not just say, oh, Danielle told me to get this one brand, but instead you go in and say, okay, I know I'm looking for turmeric root, right? And I know I want there to be black pepper in it because that activates curcumin, which is the anti-inflammatory property in it. And I know that I want it to be from India because that's where turmeric is natively grown. And I want it to be organic, and I want this X amount starting dose. I'm not going to recommend an amount because it's so different for each body. And once you have that, you can go in and start being your own detective or your own healthcare practitioner for yourself and start to weed out options. And then you can actually be a teacher for those around you as well and continue to share that education and that mindful way of looking and shopping.
That is awesome. Okay. And I think this is the most important question. And I love having you back specifically because I very distinctly remember probably this little segment from your first interview. And having you come back and talk about Four Sigmatic the first time and now talk about adaptogens. What Four Sigmatic did so very well in introducing mushrooms to coffee was just pair something that was good for us in a way that we were already doing this one habit. So, what are easy ways to begin incorporating more adaptogens into daily life?
Oh, what a beautiful question. I want to sneak adaptogens into every meal that people are making, every drink that you're consuming throughout the day. But habit stacking is so powerful. And so if you are someone that has a morning routine, whether that's coffee or tea or a bowl of fruit, there's a way to sprinkle adaptogens in there. A lot of them come as extracted powders. Some of them are more foods themselves, things like goji berries, right? So if you make, say, a breakfast bowl, you can add goji in there. Or if you have a morning cup of coffee, you can add your chaga mushroom or a luthro root or cacao, for example. If you have a midday routine, a lot of people make smoothies. That's an amazing way to add adaptogens in. So a spoonful of turmeric, or perhaps you want some cordyceps as a pick-me-up mid-afternoon. You can add those in there and blend them up. One of my favorite ways to have adaptogens on hand all the time is making, I call them raw balls, and they're little blended dates and almond butter. It's the base. And I blend them in a food processor, anything you have. And I'll add maca or lion's mane or schizandra, whatever adaptogen I'm looking to bring into myself and my household's diet that week. I'll throw a bunch of these adaptogenic powders in, and it's a really awesome way to hide some of the more intense taste of them and still have this kind of like delicious treat on the go. But the options are really endless, and it depends on which adaptogen you're using. So whether you eat it more like a snack or you simply stir it into hot water or sprinkle it on a meal, make it into a paste. A lot of people will add different powders into honey, right? And have a really medicinal honey that then they can just keep on their counter and add to a piece of toast or a cup of tea or whatever they're using honey for. So stay creative, stay open. In the book, I give really practical ways for using each one, and even break it down further based on the benefit you're looking for. So if you're looking for deeper sleep and nervous system relaxation before bed, and you have an evening ritual, you can make ashwagandha cacao kind of superfood hot chocolate for yourself and add a little nut milk and cinnamon and make this really warming, sweet treat. But stay creative, stay open. And whether it's a supplement or a tincture, more of these standard forms, or bringing them more into a beverage or a food, the option is yours.
Love that. All right. And that drink sounds yummy, actually. Okay. So I'm just typing that. All right. I love it. All right, Danielle, before I let you go, just is there anything that we didn't cover? The only one question I can think of is the book itself is called Healing Adaptogens. Where can listeners get their hands on it, and what's the exact pub date?
Great. It's called, Healing Adaptogens, the definitive guide to using super herbs and mushrooms for your body's restoration, defense, and performance. It's a mouthful, but it can be found anywhere that books are sold. So Amazon, Booktopia, Barnes & Noble, and the hub for all of those sites is healingadaptogens.com.
Beautiful. And thank you so much for being here. Is there a good place for them to follow you on social media?
Absolutely. I love follow-ups after short conversations like this. I think the goal is we just really light the fire, and then hopefully there's lots of brain neurons brewing and questions that are coming. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I want to be an ally on your journey of health, and especially in getting acquainted with adaptogens. So you can find me at Danielle Ryan Broida is my social handle, or DanielleRyanWellness.com.
Fantastic. Danielle, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, listeners, now you know the drill. It's all in your court. So you can find the show notes for today at flipping50.com/adaptogens. And what are you waiting for? Let's start Flipping 50 today.